climbing in and out of canyons, and we experienced a 100-year flood while we were out there, by the way, and got stuck on the wrong side of a river and had to wait an extra day for the river to come down enough that we could wade back across it. But the granddaddy of expeditionary behavior for training astronauts, or frankly for training anyone else, is an outfit called the Antarctic Search for Meteorites. Now, every year, the United States sends a team down to Antarctica to collect meteorites. Now, meteorites don't fall in Antarctica any more than they fall anywhere else. There's just as many down there as you get anywhere else. However, Antarctica is the best place to find them. It's really easy to find a black rock sitting on a 2-mile thick sheet of ice. It doesn't look like the other rocks because there are no other rocks. Also, the cold helps preserve meteorites more than they would in a warm, moist environment. And there's also places where the flow of the ice concentrates meteorites that have fallen over millions of years and collects them all together in a small area where it's easy to pick them up. So this is not really part of NASA, but NASA has sent 7 astronauts on these ANSMET expeditions. And everybody who comes back from that says it is just like a long-duration space flight. So I want to talk about that a little bit. Not because it's cooler than spaceflight, because not much is cooler than spaceflight, but Antarctica is open to more people than flying in space is. Right now, spaceflight is still very expensive, and only a very select few get to go do it. The opportunities are just hard to find, but basically anyone can go to Antarctica. There are bases down there. They need people to do the work down there. There's a lot of research going as well, but the support contracts go out to normal people. So you may not be able to fly in space anytime soon, but you can, without too much work, have a chance to go to Antarctica. So a trip to Antarctica in the United States program starts at McMurdo Station with a population of about 1,000 in the summer. There are about 150 brave souls who stay there for the winter. You get on a cargo plane and fly from Christchurch, New Zealand, down to McMurdo Station. The airplane lands on the ice and you climb on out, and then you go and visit McMurdo Station. This is what it looks like from a hill nearby. Got about 1,000 people in it. Looks kind of like a mining town, so it's not really attractive. This is what the living quarters look like. This is one of the dormitory buildings. It's up on posts to let the snow in the winter blow under it rather than piling up 15 feet high around it. And this is what the quarters look like inside. So you can see, even in what looks like a town, you have, you're rooming with 2 people that you may not know, and quarters are pretty tight. And if one of them sort of makes that whistling noise in his nose when he sleeps, you just have to kind of cope with that. After a couple of weeks in McMurdo training and getting your gear together, it's time to go out into the field. Now, ANSMET does its work up on the high polar ice cap, 3,000 meters above sea level, 10,000 feet. Temperatures about minus 17 Celsius, 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and then with the wind chill, it's down to minus 40. Minus 40 is a nice number because it's the same in Fahrenheit or Celsius. And there are only 8 of us out in that field camp. So we climb on board a ski-equipped, smaller propeller-driven cargo plane. This is what the scenery looks like out the window on your way to the field camp location. That's the Beardmore Glacier that figured prominently in the heroic age of Antarctic exploration when people were striving to be the first to reach the South Pole. All those little nubbly areas down there in the bottom are crevasses that are big enough to, you'd fall down hundreds of feet and never get out again. And the plane lands and drops you off in scenery that looks like this. So this is a place called Larkma-Nunatak. What you can't see in the pictures is the cold. The wind is blowing hard. You're wearing 4 or 5 layers of clothing, and that keeps you more or less comfortable. And when you look around, you see nothing that was created by human beings. It's just ice and rock. So in this environment, we set up a camp with 8 people. And the camp is largely made of these little pyramidal tents. They are a pyramid made out of aluminum struts with 2 layers of canvas around it. And they're specially ventilated so that you can use a stove in the tent, which is a really bad idea unless your tent has specifically been designed for using a stove in the tent. You can see we have some snowmobiles there and boxes of cargo. This is what your living quarters looks like from the outside. This is a Scott tent. It's about 8 feet square on the footprint. The top is about 7.5 feet high, but in the inside, that's all the room you've got. So you have a bed on either side, and the feet of the bed point toward the entrance to the tent. And then in the middle of the tent is some storage boxes and the camp stove. And this is your room, and your roommate is very close. So if you haven't gotten used to the whistling noise they make in their nose when they sleep by now, you better have brought some earplugs. On the stove, you can see a bucket with a bunch of big chunks of ice in it. That's going to be our water supply after we melt it out. So the day's work is long. You get up in the morning, you put on all your layers of clothing, you get on your snowmobile with your 7 teammates, and then you ride in a line about 10 meters apart, driving up and down these areas of blue ice, looking for any little speck of rock out on the ice and snow. And occasionally, we also sometimes stop and get out of the snow machines and then search on foot in glacial moraines. So these rows of rocks were transported there by glaciers tens of thousands of years ago, when Antarctica had even more ice. And then as the ice retreated a little bit, it left the rocks behind. So occasionally we do find a meteorite. And there in the center of this picture, you can see a tiny little black dot. And that is a meteorite. And that's about the size of most of the meteorites we find. They're only a few centimeters across. We catalog it. We take pictures. We put it in a plastic bag, and we don't do any science on it. We're going to send it back, and some scientist in a nice warm laboratory back in civilization can tell us what kind of meteorite that is. We're just putting them in bags. And then occasionally we find a big one. So this was a great find right here. This is a rare type of meteorite with a lot of carbon in it. So the season is about 6 weeks long. By the end of January, the wind is starting to pick up, the temperature's starting to drop again, and it's time to get off the polar cap. We have 24-hour daylight there when we're there in the summer, but in the winter, it's 100 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit with 80-knot winds. Just not good territory, not good place for people to be. So we pack up and we come home. And generally in ANSMET, at the end of the season, we all still like each other. And so what I wanted to do next is briefly share with you a little lesson that I put together by request from the leader of this expedition to share with the people some of the tips that they teach to astronauts for getting along in the field. So most of the participants in ANSMET are scientists and haven't had this training. And so what we came up with, and you can also apply this at home with your family now, and hopefully it'll work out for you and you'll all be smiling when they let us out again. So the lesson is called CHARM School, and of course it's an acronym because NASA itself is an acronym and everybody loves acronyms. And it stands for Take Care, Help Others, Take Action, Respect Your Teammates, and Serve the Needs of the Many. And so I want to say a few more words about each one of those. Take care means taking care of yourself, physically and emotionally. You want to be happy, you want to be healthy, and you want to be a positive force on the team rather than being ill or unhappy and making you a drag on what the team is doing. Also, take care of your teammates. Watch them, check on how they're doing. If they seem to be struggling with something, offer them help. And if you don't think they're taking care of themselves, remind them gently, hey, why don't you take some time off? Why don't you read a book or something and help yourself feel a little better? Help others. Always help pull the group toward whatever its goal is. At home with your family, your goal might just be to get through a period of confinement and still like each other. Don't be a drag on progress. Don't deliberately try to stop good things from happening. If your team has a leader, watch what they're doing. Try to make their job easier. Always do your share of the work and more if you're able. One of the things I try to do at home is after I eat my lunch, I do all my dishes. And then I do one more dish. Perhaps somebody forgot a dish. Maybe it was even me. But if everybody does all their dishes and then one more dish, all the dishes will always be washed. If you are not busy and you see somebody who's working hard, offer to help. Don't even make them ask. And then, of course, if you need help, ask for it. Your teammates want to help you. Next is take action. Good chemistry between people usually doesn't just happen. You should take charge of it. Make good chemistry happen. Don't just wait for it. An expedition in Antarctica or a sea kayaking trip in Alaska or a period stuck at home with your family can be a really cool part of your life, or it can be a horrible grind. And the thing that makes the most difference in that is how you choose to act toward each other. Okay? The weather, the specific thing you're doing, misfortunes, good things that happen are all going to turn out to be less important than your interactions with the teammates. And if you read the journals from Arctic explorers in the past, expeditions exploring new parts of the world, this comes out in their journals that really the circumstances are much less important than how the people work well with each other or not. You know, all the good fortune in the world can't make a good expedition if the people are being nasty to each other. Next is respect your teammates. You may have a choice between being smart and being pleasant. I recommend pleasant. Give things to people. Share what you have. Take turns if there's a resource that everybody's using, like the bathroom. Praise others. If you see them doing something and you like it, say so. Don't just sit on it. Always say please and thank you. In fact, the National Outdoor Leadership School instructors always say please and thank you, even when it's nighttime, pouring rain, you're trying to set up a camp, the stove won't light, it's the end of the expedition, there's hardly any food left, everybody's tired, sore, mad. Please and thank you. Please and thank you. And, you know, it makes the situation that much better. And then if you're going to make comments about somebody, try to make them critical or constructive, not critical. So offer an opportunity to help rather than just saying what you don't like. And then finally, serve the needs of the many. Old folks like me saw Star Trek II and like the quote from Mr. Spock, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. The group goals have to come before your personal goals. Do what's best for the team, not necessarily what's best for you. Don't make people wait for you. Don't play favorites. Try to treat everyone equally. So that is the end of my prepared material. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing screen and turn on my camera. And now if the community has a few questions, I will be more than happy to answer them.
We do have questions for you. First of all, I should tell you that there's much excitement and there were screams and whoops as you entered the room. So everyone is just feeling elated that you're with us. The first question is maybe it was difficult. How would you define failure? Roha Abbas is asking.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear it. Could you repeat it?
How would you define failure?
How would I define failure? I guess you have truly failed if you, first of all, if the thing you were planning didn't work and you didn't plan it very thoroughly, you didn't have the right equipment, you didn't prepare, somebody was hurt or worse, and you didn't learn anything from it.
Thank you. Vidushan Suravathan says, how do you motivate yourself, Dr. Love?
How do I motivate myself? It doesn't take a lot of work, actually. I think lots of things are interesting. You heard from my bio, I've done a bunch of different kinds of things. So as long as I'm doing something I think is interesting, and really everything is cool, okay? I never have any trouble motivating myself. And that's part of what I try to give people when they ask me for career advice is don't make a plan necessarily. The best thing to do is find something you love and then just do it. Focus on that. Make that the thing that you base your career on rather than some external plan or some idea or advice you maybe have gotten. If you choose what you love and then do it, you'll always be happy and you'll never lack for motivation.
And we have an anonymous one. How did you feel the first time you went into space?
Well, I was a little bit apprehensive. You know, it's very dangerous. The rocket launch is also a pretty amazing experience. Of course, you're strapped in on your back. You've been lying there for 2 or 3 hours waiting for the rocket to prepare, and then the engines light up. You get the big kick in your back. The whole vehicle is shaking from the vibration from the engines. You can hear the wind screaming outside, and you know you're going someplace in a hurry, and you know that it's dangerous, and you hope that everything's going to be all right. Um, Once you get up
Following on from
though, and
that,
the engines kick off, and you're not feeling gravity anymore, it's an amazing experience. And then everybody's favorite experience, especially new flyers, but even people who have been up there for 3 6-month intervals on space station, have had a year and a half of space time. Nobody ever gets tired of looking at the Earth going by. Speaking as an astronomer, I'm going to say the Earth is the most interesting thing in space. It's colorful, it's bright, it's always changing, and of course, there's a lot of amazing stuff going down on it.
thank you. Emiliano Del Rano says, have you ever experienced something really risky in space yourself?
Well, any moment in space is really risky. It is as risky to travel in space as it is to climb Mount Everest. So it's very dangerous. The launch and the landing, rockets fail about 2% of the time, and nothing can ever take away that risk. Now, I flew on one of the later space shuttle missions, and by the time we got there, we had a lot of the bugs ironed out of the system. So we did not have any major systems failures. Everything worked for us. The orbiter behaved beautifully. The space station was great. The most exciting thing that happened on my flight was one of my crewmates was ill shortly after we got to orbit and was unable to go out and do the spacewalk that he was planned to do. And so they drafted me to be his replacement. So the first time I went out the hatch to do a spacewalk, I was doing tasks that I knew about but had never trained on. So that was kind of spooky, but in the end, you put on your suit, you get your tools, you go out there, you do what you have to do, and it turned out okay.
A practical question, obviously from teenagers. Rizbaha Totram says, is the food prepared in the International Space Stations tasty?
Is the food tasty? It is. For years, they had these various freeze-dried foods like you would get for backpacking. There's thermal-stabilized stuff in plastic pouches like military rations, and then just dried foods like dried fruit and jerky. And they all tasted great when you were in space. But the reason was, when you get up into space, all the fluid in your body shifts up toward your head, and it's like having a bad head cold, and your food tastes like cardboard. So they fixed this by putting tons and tons of salt in the food to make it taste better. So when we started feeding that food to space station crew members who were up there for 6 months at a time, rather than 2 weeks in the space shuttle, it became evident that we were feeding them 6,400 milligrams of sodium a day, and it was really not good for their health. So they had to reformulate all the food with actual spices instead of just salt to make it taste better. And they succeeded in this. But even then, the most important object on the dining table in the International Space Station is the hot sauce. So they put hot sauce on everything to try to make it taste better. That brings up another point about isolation and confinement. You can read this in the journals from the Arctic explorers, and I can attest to it myself. When you are isolated and confined, the scenery never changes, the people never change. It's all about the food. So if you're stuck at home, my advice, one of the best things you can do to improve everyone's morale is pull out the cookbook. Open it up to a page you've never looked at before. Make something interesting and new, and everybody's going to love you for it.
How many minutes a day did you or were you required to exercise in space?
Oh, well, the right answer is for space station crews who are up there 6 months at a time, they are scheduled for exercise 2.5 hours every single day. And that includes resistance training. You can't lift weights on space station because it's really easy. No gravity, no weight. But they have a machine with a big sort of compressed air that you can push and pull against. You get lots of different exercises. And they're also running on a treadmill with big bungee cords to hold them down. 2.5 hours a day. And by the way, when they come back from space station, they look like star athletes because they've been working out so hard. Now, my space mission was only 2 weeks long, and I was on the space shuttle, and I was working like a demon, and I had a couple of little exercise sessions on a little stationary bicycle that they have on the space shuttle, tiny little thing, not the good exercise equipment like station people have, and I just blew off my exercise. I just didn't do it. I said, I'm busy. No one's going to know. And anyway, it's 2 weeks, and I'm not going to completely turn to jelly in 2 weeks. So that was a bad decision. When I got back to Earth, I had lost 8 pounds of muscle all off my legs in only 2 weeks. So if I was going to fly again, I would absolutely do all my exercise. If you didn't fly in space, you should freaking do your exercise. Okay, blot it off may save you time if you're going to start. It took me 2 months of hard workouts to get back what I lost in only 2 weeks in space.
How hard was it to settle back in after isolation when you returned?
Well, from my space mission was only 2 weeks, so it wasn't long enough to really feel isolated or cut off. Plus, we were working like demons. We worked 16 hours a day, tried to get a couple hours of sleep a night, and then find some time to look out the window. So I didn't really have that feeling of isolation and confinement. Now, you do get that in Antarctica in 6 weeks in field camp. But it's nice in Antarctica when you come back from field camp, you come back to McMurdo Station, you have to turn in all your gear and clean everything up and get everything put away and stuff. And that takes several days. And you get to sort of read with a small closed society there. But you see people that you haven't seen before. And you can take a bath and shave and do a bunch of stuff you didn't really get to do out in field camp. So you get to kind of reintegrate a little bit when you come back to McMurdo Station. Then you go back home. When you get back home, there's another period of adjustment. First of all, to society, where you can now go out for dinner or go see a movie. But also your family has been learning how to get along with you for 2 months, right? So all the things that you used to do, I don't know, scooping out the cat box, taking out the trash, they have been doing, and they have sort of reached a new equilibrium without you. And then they have to kind of make room for you again. Now, they're probably happy to have you back so that you can take out the trash and scoop out the cat box. But there is a little bit of adjustment there. But I don't remember any problems or feeling isolated or disconnected. Maybe I wasn't gone for long enough. Space station crews who are gone for 6 months really speak of a longer adjustment period when they return to their families. And their families are happy to have them back, but they have an equilibrium without that person, and they have to readjust how they do things to get used to having that person there again.
Do you believe there is life on other planets?
Absolutely. So in the history of Earth, as soon as the Earth was cool enough for liquid water to survive on the surface, there was life. It popped up immediately. So it seems to me that life happens wherever the conditions are right for it. Maybe even in our own solar system, maybe under the ice in the oceans of Jupiter's moon Europa or Saturn's moon Enceladus, maybe deep in the groundwater on Mars. Asterisk fine print. Life appeared immediately on Earth 3.5 billion years ago. Big C.
Dr. Love, your video's your internet connection's breaking up. There we go. Dr. Love?
Houston, we have a problem.
I think we've lost Dr. Love's internet connection. I think Dr. Love has lost his internet connection. There he is.
Test.
There you are.
Okay. Sorry about that. So for over half of the history of Earth, and for like 6/7 of the history of life on Earth, life has been bacteria, just bacteria, nothing with even what you'd call a proper cell. So just based on that, for every 7 planets with life on them, 6 of them is just going to be bacteria. And for maybe, what, 0.1% of the history of life on Earth, there's been animals that could have complex behavior. So I think those are even rarer. And I'm absolutely certain that life in space is not kidnapping people off of country roads or secretly replacing world leaders.
Sophia Elgott would like you to tell her, what can I do if someone doesn't respect me?
Keep trying, and you can help by trying to respect them. And if that absolutely doesn't work, don't make that person a part of your life. You do have choice in that sometimes. If it's family, that's more complicated. But patience and hard work are the only thing that ever work.
So another question, would you do it all again if you had the chance?
Sure. I'm having a great time. I enjoy my job. I've gotten to do some pretty cool things. I've met amazing people. Working with them has made me a better person. I'm trying to get another trip to Antarctica. Probably won't get to fly in space again, although I'm working hard to develop the new spacecraft that future astronauts will use to go to Moon and maybe on to Mars. So yeah, I'm having a great time. I totally recommend a career in exploration. You'll love it.
Well, Amanda Vanton says, what was your best experience in NASA?
My best experience in NASA, that is a hard one. I think I would have to say on my space flight, because that of course was the highlight. The first spacewalk I did where I was a substitute for another crew member was very difficult for me. But the second one was the one I'd trained for. And we went outside, we got all our work completed, and then at the very end of that spacewalk, we were waiting outside the airlock, getting the last few things done, and the shuttle and station docked together, came up northwest over the Pacific Ocean, crossed the equator, came up over Hawaii, and then came up over the west coast of the United States. And that's where I grew up. I'm from Oregon. And although it was February, and usually the weather in Oregon is rather British in February, the whole west coast was clear of clouds from Mexico all the way up to Canada, and I could see the Cascade Mountains and every place that I had known and loved and traveled to as a child just come rolling up underneath me. Plus, I knew that the hardest work I had to do on that mission was complete, and that was just an amazing experience coming up over the place of my origin, 200 miles up, 17,000 miles per hour, and seeing it all rolling by underneath me.
Thank you. You picked up on my accent, obviously. And another question, what has been the greatest reward that your work has given to you?
Oh my, that's a hard question. It's hard to know. So many good things have happened. The experiences I've had, I guess the greatest reward for me is the opportunity to work with my office mates and teammates. Again, they're all amazing people. Working with them has made me a better person. So I'm very grateful to them for all they've done for me. And it has been an honor to serve alongside them.
What tip would you give for a rising senior in high school whose dream job is to become an astronaut?
Math and science. Stay healthy and do a lot of math and science. The other thing with math and science, by the way, is there are very many good careers that start with math and science. And in particular, well, since we're speaking a little bit of British, your own best news magazine, The Economist, ran a gigantic study on what people study in school versus how much money they make when they're in careers. And the answer was there was almost no correlation whatsoever, except in one area. and more math means more money. So if you're at a loss for what to do, you don't know what you want to be when you grow up. I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up. Astronaut just kind of happened. Study more math, and it will open up more and better opportunities for you in the future.
So this is from Fernando Bonilla, I presume an interactor, maybe a Rotarian. Are there lots of astronauts and aerospace engineers who are Rotarians? Perhaps it's an invitation.
Maybe it is. I do not know the answer. We have, you name the organization, we have a champion for it. But as an active astronaut, we're not really allowed to promote any organization, no matter how good. So people don't talk about their charity work very much. Personally, I do volunteer work at a local nature center. One of my colleagues is very active in the Boy Scouts. So everybody's got their groups that they're interested in, but we don't talk about it very much at work. And of course, a Rotarian at NASA put me in touch with you guys for this event. So you know you've got colleagues at NASA.
So my final question, Dr. Love, is what do you do to avoid the thoughts that remind you that you're in isolation?
There are a lot of distractions available, especially on Earth where you have an internet connection, right? So our family gets together. My children are grown. One's in college, the other has a job, but the one with the job lives close and the one with college has been sent home. We make sure we get together as a family for a dinner and sit down at the same table at the same time and eat together a couple of times a week. We find that is very important. And even though the teenagers kind of roll their eyes when they have to sit with mom and dad, that's normal. They're teenagers. But we think it's beneficial to everybody. As in my bio, I'm an anime fan, so I have access to hundreds and thousands of hours of anime on various streaming platforms, and I can watch till I get sick of it. In this period of isolation, I'm doing more exercise. I used to go to the Astronaut gym several times a week to stay healthy. That gym is closed now. It's available only to our crews who are just getting ready to go fly and the ones who have just come back from space station and need to rehabilitate their bodies, get their sense of balance back. So I have figured out how I can do a bunch of gym exercises at home. Many of them just body weight exercises, but I've picked up bicycling again. I used to bicycle long ago when I lived in Washington State. I haven't done it so much here, but I've started that again. So extra exercise, making sure that I'm doing something I love for a period each day, and then family time to make sure that that our team is staying cohesive.
Dr. Love, I want to thank you so much for your participation today. I know the kids have been so excited to hear from you. And we as Rotarians just want to thank you for your service to us and to the world. And thank you.
You're very welcome, and thank you. I also want to mention that many other returning astronauts have posted their advice for isolation and confinement in various places on the internet. Go out and look for it. Their words won't be exactly like mine, but you may see some haunting similarities.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care.
It was a pleasure.
Bye. Okay. What an amazing talk with the, excuse me. Can you hear me? Okay. I think we're having issues on our end, but I think everything's working there. I want to thank everyone so much for joining us today. If you're